This is Superintendent Chad Grandin, and today I want to spend a few minutes talking about school funding in Iowa, what those numbers actually show, and why those numbers matter for districts like Interstate 35. First, we'll start with the big picture. Because of declining enrollment, Iowa has roughly 7,300 fewer public school students than last year. Since school funding is driven by enrollment, fewer students lower the base cost of funding schools statewide. In fact, if SSA were set at 0%, the state would spend about 80.6 million less on schools than it did last year. At the same time, the state's Revenue Estimating Conference, or REC, is projecting 4.2% growth in state revenues for fiscal year 2027. That means the state is expecting new dollars to be available in the budget. So when you combine two things, first, the additional revenue from the projected growth, and second, the cost savings tied to lower enrollment, you end up with about $140.9 million in total buying power available for public schools in FY27 without exceeding projected revenue growth. That context is really important because it helps us understand what different SSA percentages actually mean in real dollars. When you adjust for enrollment changes, SSA translate into actual spending like this. A 1% SSA still equals less spending than last year. A 2% SSA equals about a 0.6 spending increase in actual cost. A 3% SSA equals about a 1.94% increase. A 4% SSA equals about a 3.3% increase. And 4.66% SSA equals a 4.2% increase, which exactly matches the projected state revenue growth. So when we talk about SSA, it's important to understand we're not just talking about percentages on paper, we're talking about real buying power for schools. The Senate has proposed a 1.75 SSA, which equals about a $10.5 million in new spending statewide, at a time when roughly $140.9 million is available. It's a small fraction of what the state could invest in public education while still staying within its own revenue growth projections. But this isn't just about a single budget year. For districts like Interstate 35 community schools, the impact of funding decisions today compounds over time. Now, I want to be clear, I-35 is financially sound right now. We've worked hard to be responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars and to plan carefully for the future. However, persistent underfunding erodes financial stability. Over time, it can lead to difficult decisions that no school district wants to make. Reductions in staff, scaling back programs, fewer services that directly support students. When that happens, opportunities begin to narrow. Academic offerings shrink, activities and extracurriculars become harder to sustain, student support systems, the people in the programs that help kids succeed, feel the real strain. And those losses aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They affect real students, real families, and real futures. There's another layer to this conversation as well. Proposed property tax relief measures from the governor and the House include significant restrictions on districts' ability to bond against SAVE revenue. SAVE is one of the primary tools districts use to fund infrastructure. Things like facility renovations, technology upgrades, transportation, and essential equipment. If those bonding options are heavily restricted, districts will have far fewer ways to pay for those large-scale needs through traditional infrastructure funding. The result? Schools may be forced to shift those costs to the general fund just to maintain daily operations. And when that happens, operational dollars meant for instruction and student support get directed to covering buildings, buses, and equipment. That financial pressure doesn't stay in the background. It shows up in classrooms, in staffing levels, and in the range of programs that we can offer students. So when we talk about SSA and school funding, we're not just talking about this year's budget. We're talking about long-term strength, opportunities, and sustainability for our schools. We're talking about whether districts can continue to offer the kinds of learning experiences, activities, and supports that help students grow, explore, and succeed. The consequences of inadequate funding stretch far beyond a single fiscal year. They shape what our schools can be, not just today, but for years to come. And that's why these numbers matter.